Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the show. And welcome to a Saturday stream. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, whatever time it is, whatever day it is. I hope that the weekend is treating you well, and thanks for coming to join me out here on a Saturday, where we're gonna be getting into, well, I've talked to you guys about this before, but, we're going to be getting into my favorite game franchise of all time. And what once was my favorite game in this franchise of all time. Valkyria Chronicles. So good to see you guys. Glad you could come out here to join us again today. Glad to see the turnout. Glad to see all you lovely, lovely degenerates in chat this afternoon. Well, afternoon for me. It may not be for you, but good to see you guys once again. Glad to be here. Glad to have another week out of the way, and glad to be hanging out with you guys. So with that being said, chat, I do apologize. It took me a little bit longer today to get everything set up than what I expected. Simply because I've explained this before, but sometimes like I can do everything that I need to do to get a game set up and have it all ready to go, but there are just certain things that I can't actually test until I actually hit the go live button. And so that's why we have that's why we have pre-flight checks, chat. That's why I have pre-flight checks, is just to make sure that everything's working before we get started. And I can in fact confirm that everything is working as it should be. However, I will let you guys know, and you guys know that I try to do this anytime it's going to be relevant. So Valkyria Chronicles, we are going to be playing the first one today, the original. So for those of you that don't know, Valkyria Chronicles, and I'll get into kind of the history, but it is a game from 2008. And the PC version released in 2014. And like most games from that time, Valkyria Chronicles does not like multiple monitor setups, and it does not like not being the center of attention. So much like with XCOM, much like with Project Wingman, it is one of those games where anytime I don't have the window focused, the game kind of just, well, it starts pouting. The sound cuts out and all that, and so just in general, I wanted to give you guys a heads up, like I always try to do, that is a thing that's going to happen anytime I unfocus the window. So it's just, yeah, it's, once again, nothing I can do about it, but wanted to give you guys a heads up ahead of time, that this will be another one of those older games where anytime the multi-monitor setup comes into play, anytime I unfocus the window, it's gonna be difficult. So, yeah, the game is in fact tsundere. It is it doesn't like it when I pay attention to other things. And Abe Abbreviation says, for first time on stream and got gifted a sub. I mean, to be fair, Abe, and not to detract from the fact that you got a sub or that you are here, but my community is just that way. Yeah, as you can clearly see, they have this thing where they've taken it upon themselves to gift subs to everybody all the time, and I tell them not to do that, and they do it anyway. So, you know, I can't stop them, but I try not to encourage them. Although I feel like every time I bring it up, that just encourages them more. But even so, yeah, it's good that you got gifted a sub, but I am not surprised, because that's just a thing that these donkeys do. Completely unsolicited, I might add. Completely unsolicited. But anyway, chat. Anyway, so to give you guys a brief summary, well, I say brief, it's probably not going to be brief. I love this game. I love this franchise. I will tell you, you know, I've been gaming for a long time, and I know I've told you guys this before. Once upon a time, my favorite game franchise of all time was Parasite Eve. And that was way, way back in the original PlayStation days. And I played the hell out of it, loved the hell out of it. Still a great game, and I still love it. I to this day, I still hope that someday we will get a remake, like a modernization of the Parasite Eve franchise. I doubt we ever will, but it's not going to stop me from wanting it and hoping for it. Now, with that being said, in, the late 90s, early 2000s, the Dreamcast came out. And one of the games that came out for the Dreamcast was a little game called Skies of Arcadia. Now, some of you will know what Skies of Arcadia is, and some of you will not. And for those of you that do not, I can't necessarily say that I'd recommend going back and playing it today, just because it is a little bit on the older side, and it does suffer from some of the quality of life things that you may be used to in the average JRPG are definitely missing, and it shows. But if you can stand a little bit of the oldness of its of the game, I highly recommend that you check it out. Skies of Arcadia was a Dreamcast exclusive for a very long time, and it was developed internally by SEGA. It was a first-party title for the Dreamcast. And unfortunately, when the Dreamcast failed and when SEGA decided to bow out of the console market, Skies of Arcadia kind of just disappeared. Now, it did eventually get a re-release on the GameCube, and they called it, I think, Skies of Arcadia Legends, or something to that effect. So, it did eventually get a re-release, and it has been re-released on several different Nintendo platforms over the years, so it's out there. You can definitely play it now. And again, if you're interested, check it out. But the reason that I bring up Skies of Arcadia is because Valkyria Chronicles is made by the same team. And all the way back in 2002 or 2003, something like that, is when Valkyria Chronicles first got its start. As soon as the team that was working on Skies of Arcadia was done with that game, the first thing they did was start working on a sequel because it sold very well in Japan. It did not sell too well in the West, but that was just because it wasn't super like the Dreamcast in general was not super popular in the West. But the team started working on a sequel and they already had ideas. Now, Valkyria Chronicles, as it is today, is pretty different from what that sequel was initially meant to be. But I bring up Skies of Arcadia again, not only to highlight that, but because Skies of Arcadia supplanted Parasite Eve as my favorite game of all time. And if you had asked me in 2002, 2005, 2006, I would have told you proudly that Skies of Arcadia was my favorite game of all time. And I didn't know anything about Valkyria Chronicles. I didn't know what was happening. Originally, it was meant to release on the Dreamcast. Obviously, the Dreamcast failed. And so after that, when Sega decided to go into third-party development and basically just develop games for existing consoles, they started developing Valkyria Chronicles for the PS2. And then Sony announced the PlayStation 3, so they upgraded the tech and they started working on a PS3 version. Now, originally, Valkyria Chronicles was meant to be a launch title for the PS3, but unfortunately, there was some development issues and some funding issues, and honestly, the game almost didn't get made. It almost didn't get made. But it did release in, I think, the first year of the PlayStation 3's life cycle. Again, in 2008. And as soon as I heard about it, I could tell, just looking at it, I was like, this game looks familiar. And then the more I dug into it, the more I found out who was responsible for it, and I knew I had to play it. And it immediately became my new favorite game of all time. And I have loved the franchise ever since. Obviously, at this point, there are 4 games in the Valkyria Chronicles franchise. And while the first one is not necessarily my favorite in the franchise anymore, I still think it is an outstanding game. And I still think that anybody should give it a shot because it is extremely well made. It has a concise vision. It knows what it wants to do. It knows the story it wants to tell. And in spite of the way it works, in spite of the way that the game plays, in spite of the way that the game looks, it's there's depth to it. It's a little more serious and it takes its subject matter seriously, not in the angry men cursing at each other and blood, guts, and gore everywhere. It is a mature game in the sense that it it is a game that treats you like an adult while looking like it's made for kids. And that's what I love about the Valkyria Chronicles franchise, and specifically about the first game. Now, for those of you that don't know, I was working in those days as a freelance writer, and one of the industries that I found myself writing in frequently was the games industry. So, yes, that means, believe it or not, once upon a time, I was technically a games journalist. Now, this was back when that meant something, and this was back before games journalists were effectively third-party marketing firms for games. This is back when games journalism actually, was a thing and people cared what these outlets had to say. Um, with that being said, I was very interested in Valkyria Chronicles as a game reviewer. And again, the more I looked into it, the more I found out about it, the more I learned who was behind it and, the development history of the game, the more I knew that this was going to be something special. And in my opinion, it is. It was, and it still is. And it's a franchise that I think everybody should at least give a try. It's not going to be for everybody. I will say that. I mean, if you're one of those folks that doesn't like anime games, that doesn't like waifu games, it may not be for you. But I would say give it a chance anyway. If for no other reason than because there's a lot more going on than just the visuals, than just the styling. Did you ever build that garage for you? Yep. No, small PPC. I haven't actually done that yet. Just because, with my current employment situation and everything else going on in my life, I haven't really had a lot of time for hobbies and things like that. It is a thing that I intend to do at some point in the future. But here in the last year or so, I haven't really had the time to do anything like that. And it sucks. But it's definitely on my list of things to do. I absolutely want to build that figure. So it's still in the closet, and I do intend to build it someday. So, maybe I will share that journey with you guys, not necessarily on stream, because I've said before, I don't have the setup to really do like arts and crafts on stream. But I might, give you guys some pictures and stuff on the Discord and what have you, just so you can see. But anyway, Valkyria Chronicles is an outstanding series, and specifically this first game. The thing that really got my attention in the very first game is, like I said before, it's a very mature game for, like, if you were just judging the game by how it looks, you and I was absolutely floored at how subtle, but also how, I guess, what is the tone? I don't want to say somber because that's not right. Valkyria Chronicles is a game about war. And it is a game that, in spite of the way it looks and in spite of the way it plays, never ever stops remembering that it's a game about war. And again, it's not an exceptionally violent game. It's not an M-rated game. There's not any particularly disturbing themes. But you can tell that the developers, and the writers especially, wanted to write a story that was respectful to what war is and how it affects people. And hopefully you'll see that as we play through the game. And I'm not gonna sit here and just gush about the entire game from start to finish, because I talk about how I don't have anything to talk about for extended periods of time. Um, but at the same time, Valkyria Chronicles is one of those games I could sit here and talk about for hours. But I'm not gonna do that to you, at least not at the beginning of the stream. I will simply say the game is deeper than its visuals would let on, and there's a lot more going on under the hood, both mechanically and narratively, than you would think just looking at it or just seeing it in action for a few minutes. And it struck a chord with me for a bunch of different reasons. Again, I'm not going to get into why all the way up front. Like, I'm not going to front load you guys with a bunch of stuff about the game, because I want you to experience it too. For those of you out there that maybe haven't played the game or haven't played the game all the way through, this will be a good experience for you guys to see the game in action and see what it's about. And when we get to those points, I'll kind of talk about them a little bit more, because like I said, there's a lot more going on than what you would initially think. Just again, at a surface read. And Urs says they do jump for joy when they get a kill. I mean, that's fair. And there are a little bit of I guess moral dissonant things here in the game, because the game is still trying to be upbeat. At the end of the day, I think the main thing about Valkyria Chronicles, and it goes all the way to the theme song, is war doesn't have to be the end of the world. And that even though you lose things in war, you can always come back. You can always recover. And so the game, while it does take a serious tone with war, it also tries to stay upbeat. And that's something that a lot of war games do not do. A lot of war games focus on the tragedy, they focus on the death, the destruction, and the game does acknowledge that. But it does it in a way that is positive, that is optimistic, and that is hopeful. And for me, that was a huge deal, because it was probably the first time I had seen a game that was so focused on war and combat, but then at the same time wasn't cynical and wasn't navel gazing about it. It still acknowledges that war is bad, and that people on both sides suffer, but at the same time, it never takes that and then says, well, we should all be angry and we should all, just be completely cynical and it's a very optimistic game. It does have some cynical moments, but in general, it is a very upbeat game. It's a very positive game. It does have its serious moments. And for those of you that are familiar with the game, you already know what I'm talking about. But again, it was something very new and unexpected for me. But as soon as I played it, I could immediately recognize the DNA of Skies of Arcadia. And again, that's the thing that I'll say going in before we get started. For those of you that are familiar with Skies of Arcadia, if you've never played Valkyria Chronicles before, it feels like it straight from the beginning. As soon as you start, it just feels right. Yeah, the game does have humor, but it tones that humor back for the serious moments. There are serious moments in the game, and when you get there, the game treats them with all the seriousness that it deserves. So you're not gonna. It doesn't suffer from that Marvel syndrome where every serious moment then has to be immediately undercut by comedy to take the edge off. Like, the game gives you time to ruminate on the serious moments and take that in, instead of, oh, well, we had the serious moment, time to move on, time to get back to the action, time to get back to the comedy. Like, it doesn't do that. Like, when there are serious moments, it gives you time to sit in those moments. But anyway, chat, I'm gonna stop waxing poetic about the game, because that's not what you guys came here for. I think you guys came here to see me actually play the game.
The year was 1935 EC. Two powers controlled the continent. In the east, the sun rose over the autocratic East European Imperial Alliance, otherwise known as the Empire. In the west, a network of loosely allied democracies formed the Atlantic Federation. Both powers depended on a precious mineral ragnite for their survival, and its growing scarcity led to the inevitable war. Hostilities began in the east when the Empire aggressively crossed their western border. The Atlantic Federation responded, and the Second European War was on. The Empire, with its vast military superiority, struck hard, gaining ground in early victories and putting the Federation on the defensive. Emboldened by their progress and momentum, the Empire set their sights beyond the borders of the Federation. In neighboring Gallia, a peaceful principality along the sea, they found their next victim. Gallia had long maintained its neutrality in the tensions between the two superpowers. But the rich stores of ragnite under the Gallian soil proved too tempting for the Empire. It amassed troops along the eastern border and invaded with all the force of an avalanche. Prologue. Gallia to arms.
So to point out, at the very beginning, I am gonna gush about this game, Jen. First of all, I want to point out the way this game looks. I've talked about this before, but once upon a time, games used to have themes, which I know sounds crazy. Imagine a game having a unified theme and an idea. And everything in that game coinciding with that idea. In case you weren't paying attention, at the very beginning, a book opened. Yeah? And it's not really a spoiler. It's not really a spoiler. But the name on the book's cover was Irene Kohler. This is a book about the war in Gallia. And that's why the game looks the way that it does. Because it's a book. And the way that the engine renders it makes it look like a book. It makes it look like an illustration. This is what we, in the industry, this is what professionals call a theme. So, some of the more ridiculous elements, and more importantly, the way the game looks, the tone of the game, all tie into the fact that this is a book. It is a story in motion. So think about that as we go through the game. I want you to think about the last time you saw a game, or anything in media for that matter. Have a theme like this and stick to it. Just stick to it as hard and fast as this game does. Because again, games do not do this anymore. Not generally speaking. I mean, obviously there are still games out there every once in a while that do it. But very, very few games. Very, very few games commit so wholly to an idea. Now, with that being said, there's and I'm gonna go a little bit on the darker side here. There's you hear people talk about, you know, you should always appreciate your loved ones. You should always talk to them and things like that, because there's gonna come a point in your life, whether it's your parents, your brothers, your sisters, your wife, your children, there's gonna come a point when it'll be the last time you ever see them, the last time you ever get a chance to say something. And I didn't realize it at the time, but as a games journalist, we were watching in real time the death of AAA video games as art. It's easy to look back on it now and say, well, of course it was happening. Of course the industry was being ruined by suits. But way back in 2007, 2008, I saw this game. And it was insane to me that somebody had put this much effort into something, that somebody had tried this hard to make a game that you could genuinely call art. And not just because of the way it looks, but because, again, it is so committed to its theme. It is so committed to its story. And again, we didn't realize it at the time, but very, very shortly after that would be the last time we saw games try to do stuff like this. So it holds a special place in my heart because of that. This, I mean, again, not to get too far into hyperbole, but I think 2008 was probably, or not necessarily 2008 specifically, but this era of games is when video games peaked. This was the golden age of games. And unfortunately, it's been all downhill from here. Anyway, Jack. Enough pre-game gushing. Let's get into the first cutscenes, the introductory cutscenes for the game, so that you guys can hopefully see why I love this game and the series as much as I do.
March 1935. Outside the Gallian border town of Brule. Residents are leaving the town before the invasion, headed inland towards the capital.
I haven't been down this road in years. It really hasn't changed very much. Whoa. Already? Hey there, guys. You're beautiful. Starting early this year. You're heading upstream, huh? How's the water?
Welkin is kind of a dork, but that's what I like about him.
Freeze! Put your hands in the air. Slowly. haven't seen you around before. What's your name?
My name's Welkin. And you are?
The one with the gun. We're with the Brultown Watch. I'm Alicia. Alicia Melchiot. So, I'm wondering what you've been writing in that little book you've got there. Imperial spies are in the area.
This book is nothing, really. I was just sketching the fish and, you know...
Yes. Oh, I know. And you know there's a war on, don't you? All right then, Mr. Artist. We'll talk about fish sketching down at the station. Take him away.
Thanks, fish.
And of course, some of you have already pointed this out. Again, those of you that are familiar with the game already know. This game is... It's not trying to hide the fact that it's an allegory for certain parts of World War II. I mean, they call it EW2, for fuck's sake. But if you're familiar with kind of what happened in Holland and to a lesser extent in Estonia, Lithuania, and Latvia during the war, this is very much that. Although it's very clearly inspired by Belgium, Holland, that kind of thing. So, like, yes, you're not crazy. This is, in fact, a very, very poorly masked allegory for World War II. Now, with that said, they're not just copying it outright. They do their own thing, they have their own story and world and background and all that, which we do get into eventually. But at least here at the beginning, they're kind of just using that World War II allegory as a frame of reference to make it a little bit easier to understand what's going on. And I've said this before, but the Japanese do that a lot. Whether it be video games or manga or anime, the Japanese use a lot of stereotypes and use a lot of allegories because it's narrative shorthand. If I explain a thing that basically sounds like World War II to you, then you kind of already have an idea in your head about what's going on, what the stakes are, that kind of stuff. So now I don't have to spend so much time explaining 500 years of lore and all this other crap. We can just get to the point where there's a war. There are two sides. There's this once formerly neutral nation that's caught in the middle. And so, okay, good, we're up to speed already. By the end of the second cutscene, we understand exactly what's happening. So now, as the plot and the characters and the story diverge and go off to do their own thing, you already have a solid understanding of the world without them having to spend an hour or 5 hours in a tutorial section explaining every single tiny little detail of this world and how it works. And again, this is the kind of thing you don't see games do anymore. No, I mean, Sierra, you say that. The lore is there. They just don't front load the game with the lore. They don't force you to sit through it as a primer. They just get you into the game and say, here's what's going on, so that you can start to understand. And then, if you want to go in, I mean, for fuck's sake, for those of you that don't know, as we get further into the game, you're gonna get weapons for your troops, and you get upgrade trees for those weapons, and every single upgrade of every single weapon on the enemy side and on the friendly side, they have journal entries for all the weapon nerds out there that will tell you about the tanks and the guns and the grenades and how they were developed, why they were developed, you know, the development problems that, like, the lore is absolutely there if you want to get into it, but the game never front loads itself with lore. It just And I know everybody compares games to Dark Souls now, but like Dark Souls, the lore is an optional part of the game. And you will definitely get a better appreciation for the game and the world if you get into the lore, but it's never a requirement. You don't have to do that. It's just there if you want to get into it. Anyway, Jim, we got another cutscene. Here we go. Well, first of all, Nikolai resubscribing for a second month, saying, "Take my gratitude, funny lady." Well, thank you, Nikolai, for coming back for the second month. I've said before, the second month is, in fact, the best month. And I know I'm not the first content creator to say that, but I'm a firm believer. The second month is the best month because that's the month where you decided that not only was I good enough to take a chance on, but that I was good enough to come back for more. So thank you, Nikolai, for 2 months of support, and hopefully many, many more in the future. Alright, chat. It's the Imperial attack. This is where things are gonna get real.
Flowers, bugs, and fish. You're not bad with a pen, are you? I have to say, they're really very good.
Thank you. So you see, I really was just sketching.
Maybe. Or this could be some kind of secret code. And I intend to take my time finding out for sure.
Great.
Welks? Is that you?
Isara! Oh, your timing is perfect.
What have you gotten yourself into now, Welkin? Wait. Don't you live at the old general's house?
That's right. I'm General Gunther's daughter, Isara.
You do know everyone's supposed to evacuate, right?
Yes, I'm aware of that. My brother's here to help me move to the capital, but that may be difficult. I mean, unless you're willing to let him go, that is.
Huh? I apologize, but I was just doing my job, you know. I saw you with the notebook and thought you were a spy. Again, I'm really sorry about that.
Thanks. Don't worry about it. I can see how I might have looked a little suspicious.
Welks has a real passion for observing nature. That's why he's studying it at the university, right?
Guilty as charged. I get so into it sometimes I forget where I am, or that somebody might be watching me.
Gunfire! Everyone keep your heads down!
Over there! Come on! Damn it!
Welkin, you can handle a gun, right?
Yeah. I mean, I made it through training anyway.
Well, they're probably just a small scouting team. We should be able to take them out.
I'm with you.
Yeah, they do like their windmills. They do like their windmills, chat. About saving the game. Chad, do we need to save right before the first mission? I feel like we'll probably be okay. I mean, I hope we'll be okay. But again, kind of to my point. You notice, we have the bad guys doing bad guy things. Killing civilians in the very beginning of the game. Establishes stakes. Establishes stakes. Lets you know exactly who the good guys are and who the bad guys are. Are you aware of the bug crash when you get to the main hub? I am not. Hopefully that doesn't happen. But again, stakes, understanding the sides, understanding the situation, and aside from me taking the time to sit here and interject every little section with 15 minutes of flapping my fucking jaws. If you just take this game for what it is, we are, what, 4 minutes into the game? 5 minutes into the game? And we know absolutely everything we need to know to understand the conflict, the factions, and the stakes. Games don't do that anymore. So let's get into the first battle, chat, and we can show you exactly how this game plays. A little confused why a scouting party would reveal themselves and just open fire. Small PBC, the answer is so that the game can happen. That's why. Also, because the Imperials are evil. Essentially. I mean, again, to go back to my discussion about themes. Themes are important. And the theme that this is not a 100% accurate recollection of the events of the war. Yeah, this is a book written by a war correspondent. And this is her retelling of the events as they described them. There are other games in the series that go out of their way to break away from this conceit and show you that the Imperials are not, in fact, just evil bad guys that gun down civilians. But in this first game, we have an unreliable narrator. And the game never... Like, the game is never gonna turn to you, break the fourth wall, and be like, yeah, the Imperials are evil, because the person writing the book is a Gallia. But it's there. The subtext is there. And if you're paying attention, you understand. The bad guys are so blatantly mustache-twirlingly evil because it's a biased perspective. Anyway, chat, let's get into the first battle here.
Okay, here's the plan.
We've got to eliminate the Imperial scouts that are approaching Brule. We'll deploy from here and take out all 3 of them. It's only 3 guys, chat. Just cross the bridge and take them down as fast as you can. Our objective here is to eliminate all enemies. I mean, I'll talk about that in a second. Let's take care of them one at a time, nice and easy.
Let's get started. Just stay calm and get it done.
I see 3 of them.
That's 3 too many. Stay sharp. Listen a second. There's something I should explain.
Just explaining how the game works, chat, you get command points. When combat starts, you'll see a map of the area and your unit's positions. This is referred to as command mode. Here, you'll select the unit you'd like to move based on their position respective to the enemy and then press the button. Doing so uses up one of the command points displayed at the top of the screen. They reflect your ability as a commander and represent the number of times you can give instructions to your units each player phase. In this battle, you have 3 CP. Terrible abbreviation. So you can issue instructions to your units up to 3 times. Let's try moving a unit now. So Chad, listen. I'm gonna address something for veteran players. I am aware that in most missions, you can just rush the objective and capture it and end these things in 1 or 2 turns. I do not intend to play this game that way. I fully intend to play this game the way it was intended. So, while I am aware of all the goofy exploits and other cheese that you can pull in this game, I think that detracts from the experience, so I'm not going to be playing the game that way. Definitely curious how the story will progress because the original cause of the war was a shortage of resource that they depend on, which is objectively speaking a better reason than what some wars have been fought for. Absolutely agree. To go from that to attacking this third nation makes you think there might be more to it. And again, you would be right, small PVC. I'm not going to tell you what, but yes, there is absolutely more going on beneath the surface, and the story gets there. So you're not wrong. You're not wrong. Each hit or kill gives experience? Not exactly. So in this game, you don't get experience from kills and stuff like that. Once we get a little further into the game, we get the... I think they call it squad management or something like that. And you upgrade each class of soldier. There are multiple types of soldier. Obviously, this is the first mission, so they're only giving you the one type to begin with. But as we get further into the game, you'll have different classes of soldiers with different abilities. And you rank up your soldiers based on the class that they are. And so essentially you upgrade the class, and then everybody in that class gets leveled up. And it's good, in my opinion, that they do it that way, because then you don't have to worry about that classic JRPG trope of, well, these are the 3 characters that are good, and these are the ones that I used at the beginning of the game, so I'm just going to keep using them, and then none of the other characters get used. XP is from objective clearing ranks. This is true. Dizzy buttons is correct. So you get money and you get experience for every mission that you do, and it's based on your performance. Now, you do get higher ranks if you finish a mission faster, so we might have to do a little bit of grinding, but essentially experience is for upgrading your units, and money is for upgrading your equipment. So you upgrade your units to give them higher levels and better stats with experience. You use money to upgrade the weapons, the equipment, and the vehicles. Yeah, S ranks are basically blitzing through the map. Anyway, oh man, I forgot. This is the maximum speed with the left stick. This is the maximum speed that it's moving at. I thought there was a button you could hit to make it move faster, but I don't remember what that button is. In-game music seems much louder than you, FYI. Is it, champ? Is the music still loud? Can you name your units now? Now each unit is its own character, and they don't do it as much in this game, but in later games they actually go to the trouble of giving you side stories for basically every character. Is that better, chat? Okay, we'll try that again. If it's too loud, let me know. Alright, and again, just listen to the sound effects, chat. Themes, chat. They don't fucking make games like this anymore. Yeah? And Max, damn it, gifting us up to Dizzy Buttons. Thank you once again, Max, for the gifted sub. You don't have to do that, but thank you for the massive generosity and the massive chicken. And of course, Dizzy, welcome back into the cult of bad tactical decisions. Glad to have you back in the fold again, my friend. And as always, you know where the Ecto Cooler is, so I'll leave it to you. Speaking of leaving it to me.
Moving out!
Leave it to Alicia. Action points. This is a core mechanic, chat. There's a quiz on Friday. Pay attention. God, I hate that abbreviation. Use command points to select a unit in command mode, and you'll be plunged into action mode. Here, you can freely move the unit you selected around the field. As you move around in action mode, the action points gauge at the bottom of the screen will gradually deplete. This represents the unit's mobility. Once it reaches 0, the unit will be unable to move any further. Keeping an eye on the unit's remaining AP while they're in motion is critical to keeping them safe. For now, use the left stick to move the unit near the sandbags. Yeah, so there's definitely a lot of mechanics going on, but they do kind of introduce it one at a time. So here, in case you don't understand what they're talking about, we can move our troops pretty much as if this were a third-person shooter. But it is still an RPG. It's still a turn-based game. So while we can move freely within the map, it's not a run-and-gun kind of game. So we basically move and shoot, or shoot and move. You can take your actions in any order that you want, but the fact that it gives you free movement, free aiming, and free actions makes it a much more dynamic turn-based game than what you're probably used to. In games like XCOM, where you're very, very strictly limited to moving on a grid, and, you know, obviously if you attack first, then you can't move. In this game, you absolutely can. You can take your shot first and then use up all your action points, because those two things have nothing to do with each other. Now, what is the button that I'm gonna have to... I'm wondering which button I'm gonna have to hit to get to the sandbag cover. About attacking. So we press the right button to enter targeting mode. There, the unit will prepare to attack with their currently selected weapon. Left stick moves the crosshairs, and the left and right buttons snap between targets. Enemies will not attack while you're in target mode, so take your time to aim well before pressing A to fire. Your shots will land somewhere within the circle surrounding the crosshairs, so it's best to center it on the entire target. Shots to the head or other weak points will result in greater damage. A unit can only attack from target mode up to once per action, so choose wisely before you open fire. If the target survives, they may launch a counterattack. A damaged unit may not have the HP to survive the enemy's counter, so be careful when planning your attack. Oh no, chat. Hold on. Damn it. Alright, I'm gonna have to wait until we get back to the menu. Alright, so it is the A button. Now, I'm gonna try attacking, but I don't know. Let's try to shoot him in the back of the head, chat. You think we're good? Alicia is the greatest soldier that ever lived. So let me see. Damn it. There we go. Take the shot.
Now!
There we go, chat. We got it. About ending actions. A unit with 0 remaining AP that's already performed an attack in target mode is unable to act further. Press the B button to end their current action. This will return you to command mode, where you'll be able to select the next unit you wish to direct. You can press B and end a unit's action even if they have not attacked and still have AP. Yeah, the ragdoll. This was that era of gaming, chat. This was that era of gaming, where ragdolls were everywhere and they were goofy as shit. So yes, be prepared for that, because we're going to get a lot of it in this game. With that being said, one of the interesting things, they do tell you this eventually, but they don't tell you up front, is you can actually move the same character more than once. If you look at, well, I mean, it's kind of hard to see because I'm a little bit in the way, but if you look at Alicia's action bar, which is the bar on the bottom, the yellow or orange bar, that's her maximum AP for this turn if I choose to move her again. But this is part of how people cheese the game, because Alicia, as one of the star characters, has higher AP than even other soldiers in her class, And so you can very much just charge her to the end and capture the objectives. And I don't recommend doing that. Again, it kind of ruins the game in my opinion if you do that, but it is a thing you can do. It's gonna be funny if they clip into buildings and fly through the sky. There is some flying through the sky, but they don't really clip through buildings. The developers did at least go far enough to make most, if not all, scenery on the map collisional. So, like, even if they ragdoll, they do hit buildings and stuff. Yeah, sometimes they'll fly over the roof and stuff, but if they end up in a place where they're not supposed to be, they will just respawn somewhere. Anyway, let's continue moving our.
Ready to go.
Actually, is there? I didn't check on the map if there was any other cover. I probably should have done that. Cause I don't think we can make it to any other cover this turn. That'll be alright. It's a tutorial mission, chat. Ending the phase. When your command points reaches 0, the player phase ends and the enemy phase begins. One player/enemy phase pair constitutes a single turn. The fewer turns you complete the mission in, the more cash and experience you'll receive at the end. But being too hasty can lead to unnecessary risks. The key is to finding a challenging balance. Chat, I don't like this abbreviation. When used well, even a limited pool of command points can take out a significant number of foes. Command points can be used on the same unit multiple times. This is where they actually tell you that. For instance, a pool of 3 command points can be used to move one unit 3 times in a row. Perfect for cutting into enemy lines or hurrying past dangerous terrain. That said, people get tired. They'll start each consecutive action with fewer AP than the last, so keep that in mind. They say that, but technically there is a lower limit. Like, you never get to a point where your soldiers have no action points, but it can get pretty low. If you use the cancel button to end your phase with command points still remaining, those command points will be carried over to the next turn. Now that is important, because there are some missions where you have to wait, especially in like boss fights and stuff, where you kind of have to wait out certain boss phases, and being able to stockpile those command points is actually really useful, because then you're basically saving your turns during a point where you can't really do anything, so that you can then, after having banked them, be able to do more damage and accomplish more on the following turn when you can actually do something. Command points are a precious resource. How you choose to manage them will decide your fate. In case you didn't know that the action economy is important in RPGs, chat. Alright.
Here we go.
Actually, shit. I need to change the control scheme, chat. When standing near sandbags, the command crouch will appear. Press A to take cover behind them. While hiding behind cover, units are harder to target, take less damage, and are immune to headshots and critical damage. That's a very important mechanic, chat. Meanwhile, units caught out in the open by enemy attacks will be easier to hit and could take significantly more damage. Advance carefully, moving from cover to cover, and always try to end your actions safely hidden from harm. Does headshot matters or... No, it absolutely matters. Not only infantry, but also vehicles have weak points. And hitting those weak points can absolutely expedite your ability to defeat the enemies quickly. And I'll get into that once we actually start seeing tanks show up. Doing so could keep your troops alive long enough to secure victory for Gallia. We're not going to use cover, we're just going to charge. Charge the enemy, chat. This may seem a little goofy, but I'm going to do it. Get wrecked, nerd.
Now! Yes!
Now that I've taken that action, I'm just going to go ahead and get the cover. Now to explain what you're seeing there. Any enemy that sees you and is within weapon range when you're moving can shoot at you. And again, the game's going to explain all this, but I want to explain it so that you know what's happening. They call it return fire or reaction fire, and it's part of what makes the freedom of movement a little bit more risky. Because obviously, you can't just run out in front of a machine gun and expect not to take damage. So, the return fire mechanic makes it so that you still have to weigh your actions, as opposed to, again, more traditional turn-based games. Just to use XCOM as an example, where unless a unit spends action points, they don't get to shoot at the enemy, even if the enemy's running right in front of them. And because there are different classes of soldiers, there are different soldier classes that excel at things like charging into enemy fire. Whereas Welkin and the rest of the enemies on this first mission are what they call scouts, who have low HP, low defense, but high accuracy and high mobility, as you would expect from a scout.
Moving out!
And it is all based on sightlines. So in this situation, as long as I stay out of that guy's area of vision, I won't take reaction fire. However, one of the advantages of the scout is that they have a much wider cone of vision than other units. Where, you know, for example, if this was a shock trooper or a lancer, which are units that we'll explore later, if these were some of the other types of units, I would be able to just get around behind this guy. And yes, they do take more reaction fire from the rear. It makes criticals more likely to happen, and if they have abilities like, for example, being able to dodge or mitigate damage, those abilities will not trigger if you attack from behind. So there's some give and take there. And it makes positioning very important.
Please hit!
There we go. Yeah, giggity. To troubleshooter's point.
I don't see any more of them.
So there we go. We got some money, we got some shekels, and we got some experience. Yes, that is exactly what I'm saying, PPC. You should always try to do it from the rear when and where you can. Or, to put it another way, Planned Parenthood. Use rear entrance. They're basically one-shotted. Correct, Reploid. But if I had decided to just charge forward, which I absolutely could have done, I could have beaten the mission on the first turn.
There's smoke out. There's no other sign of the enemy.
Good. Now, go keep watch and stay alert.
Yes, ma'am. What should we do with the bodies, ma'am?
We'll bury them. So it's begun. I'll do whatever it takes to protect the people of this town. I'll do it. Even going to war, I'll do it.
What are those?
Seeds from the lion's paw. It blooms white, small, simple, and strong.
I want to be able to remember, once the war is over, that it wasn't all just people killing people. That even in war, there was also new life.
On the 15th day of the 3rd month of the year 1935, the Empire began its assault in earnest. A formal declaration of war was made upon Gallia. Though it was only a small front in a massive continental assault, what followed would prove that a tiny nation could best a military giant. These events would tell a story of tragedy hidden in the mists of time. A story of courage and of trust, of persecution and hate, and of love blooming even through the flames of war. What follows is a record of this conflict and of those who fought, lived, and died.